DeSantis, who is a source of pride for all of us who call Florida home. He represents the 6th district. He's running for governor. He was a former Navy lawyer, and he was, and he's a very successful author. So I beg to you to welcome Congressman DeSantis with a big round of applause.
Is that on? Oh, there we go. Well, good afternoon. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. You know, as we look at what's going on in the Western Hemisphere, we see a lot of the usual suspects that are causing the problems. Cuba, Venezuela, Bolivia, Nicaragua. And part of what we need to do as policymakers is to work to really counteract that influence. One of the things that's happened with the new administration is a realization that the Obama policy, where he was basically giving the Castro dictatorship in Cuba huge concessions for really nothing in return, no change in behavior, nothing involving human rights or elections or anything, that has not been successful. The regime has really behaved probably worse since that rapprochement. And if you look at what's going on in Venezuela, I mean, the Cuban military has a hand in all of that, and they're causing a lot of problems throughout the broader region. So the president announced a new way forward. He has taken some steps, but I think he needs to take more steps to actually implement the policy that he articulated. If it is true that Raul Castro is going to retire soon, I think it's important that our government here in the United States not recognize a dictatorial successor. They should have a free election. I know they won't, but if they're not going to have a free election, we should not recognize him passing the torch to the next line of dictators in Cuba. And I think that would send a powerful signal for the rest of the world. But when you look at the influence of these countries, I mean, what can that mean for the hemisphere? Well, one of the things that we see is an invitation for more Russian and Chinese influence in the Western Hemisphere. And if you care about democracy and human rights, you know, that's not a great thing to see happening, given those two nations' track records. And Russia in particular, I think, has had more ability to get involved. I think China is going to get involved economically. I mean, that always comes at a price, and so I think it'll probably be counterproductive for those countries that really welcome more Chinese influence. But that is a reality that you're facing. The other reality is that there's an increasing awareness that the Western Hemisphere and rogue states within the Western Hemisphere can be conduits for terrorism. The amount of terrorism in the Western Hemisphere is something that doesn't really get a lot of headlines because people are focused on ISIS and Iraq and Syria, even some of the things that happen in Europe. But the fact of the matter is, if you go back 5 or 6 years, you will see a steady increase in militant activity and in people who are affiliated with Hezbollah and other terrorist groups be prevalent in the Western Hemisphere. And that should concern everybody who cares about a free society and who wants to see you know, economic growth and wants to see democracies, because that's completely counter to what we're trying to do. So those countries, I think, are facilitating, you know, inviting rogue states in and inviting rogue actors into the Western Hemisphere. In terms of Venezuela, I think this President Trump has been much stronger than President Barack Obama. I mean, Obama was basically a buddy of Chavez. I mean, I think they saw each other as a kindred spirit, as men of the left. And so he really didn't do what was necessary to make common cause with the people of Venezuela who were being oppressed by the Maduro government. Trump has, at least rhetorically, been willing to do that. And I think we just need to take whatever measures we can to stand with the people of Venezuela. You know, that regime is not a legitimate government at this point, and it is oppressing and denying basic human rights to the folks there. And if you were to be able to have a free Venezuela, I think that would have a huge impact, obviously for the people of Venezuela first and foremost, but I think throughout the region, I think that that would be a major step in the direction of freedom. And that's just the way these things go. I mean, once you start to see freedom beyond the march, we can get momentum and bring freedom to more people. When you have steps backwards, I think that that emboldens a lot of people who don't necessarily see things the same way as many of us here in the United States do. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to come here and just say a few words. And I really appreciate you guys organizing this forum. I think that what you've done so far has been great. And I think you've had a lot of really, really knowledgeable and powerful speakers already. So thanks for coming to Washington.